Good morning. I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors to order on Tuesday, December 14th at 10 a.m. Would you please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
And now you're gonna switch it?
All right, we have 21 present. Thank you. Presentation of the agenda. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Correspondence. Does anybody have any correspondence to add? Public comment.
Okay, we do have another individuals online. If you are, we do have individuals that are online. If you'd like to speak, there's two ways of doing it. If you're called in, you can hit *9 and that'll raise the hand and I can give you the floor. Likewise, if you're viewing us online, you can raise your hand on the system and I can give you the floor and allow to speak. So I will ask 3 times if there's anyone who'd like to speak. We do have one individual who called in. With the last digits of 513, you have the floor. You have 3 minutes to speak. You have to, I think you have your phone muted though. There you go.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Donald Fricks, 8305 Quarterline Road, Fish Creek, Wisconsin. Happy December to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak remotely, and I hope it continues. Number one of my points, as there appears to be no valid reason preventing an immediate adaptation of county policy to enact YouTube live streaming of public broadcast, a public broadcast of all agendized county meetings. Consequently, immediate recording of the video and immediately available access to the public through YouTube is a policy that I'd like to see enacted. I've got video of a committee meeting where a committee person is making false accusations or spurious accusations about a constituent from back in February of 2020, and I think this kind of poor behavior from supervisors during meetings would be largely eliminated if the live video streaming would be allowed, where people don't have to register with the county website in order to join a meeting and watch it. Anyway, and would professionalize the conduct of the meetings a little bit. Number 2, and my final point for today, while I respect the opinion and analysis of the county administrator that the Mill Pond project is complete, I would, in my opinion, classify that statement as speculative fiction, considering the pending summary legal judgment about to be rendered this coming Thursday, and potential ramifications and costs for the county to clean up the highly contaminated sediment that was deliberately allowed to be hydraulically dredged from the mill, behind the mill pond. So I hope, I hope that the county would be able to actually get together, hold a closed session meeting about what their attorneys are planning to do on Thursday. I know it's a little late in the game now, but I don't think it's ever happened. So I think every county board supervisor is allowed to talk about this legal matter because it's never been brought up or discussed, to my knowledge, in a closed session. And it appears that facilities and parks and land conservation committee chairs are the only ones who have controlled resuming any kind of look at what was happening during the drawdown period, the 2-year drawdown period. And
30 seconds.
I don't think that the supervisors have been informed of what the attorneys are telling the county they need to do, and have never been allowed any input as to what they would like the county to do regarding the ramifications of the drawdown. So thank you very much, and I wish I could hang around, but I have to go to work, so thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Again, if you're online, you can, oh, there is another individual, oh, was already completed. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Again, if you're on the phone, you can hit *9. Likewise, if you're online, there's a icon at the bottom that says raise hand. You can click that and I can give you the floor to provide comment. For the second time, anyone who would like to provide comment? Okay, we do have another individual. Jackie, I have you unmuted and you have the floor. You have to unmute yourself on your computer.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much. I just want to introduce myself. This is I'm Jacqueline Staley and my husband Thomas Staley.
Oh, hello. Thank you.
And we're participating today regarding item number 12 on the agenda for our rezoning request for that parcel. And just want to let you know we're here if you have any questions. Appreciate your consideration for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to speak? For the second time, anyone who wants to speak? And for the final time, anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, that completes the public comment.
Is there any supervisor's response? Okay. Item 8, approval of the minutes of the November 9th, 2021 public hearings for budget and annual meeting. We have a motion and a second. Is there any comments, questions, corrections, grammatical remarks, other errors? Susan.
Under the discussion of Washington Island and the compensation and reimbursement, there's just some wording that looks like it jumped a line. I'm not suggesting how it should, but perhaps Jill could just read through it later. It looks like one line should be higher. Anyway, so there's some tangled language in there. It's the second paragraph under that, compensation and reimbursement.
Okay. Anything else? If not, by voice vote, we'll look at Susan's remarks.
Yes.
Correction. Okay. By voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Number 9, County Administrator.
Sure, so why don't we start with our update from our public health officers? Sue, I moved you into the queue. Actually, just give me 1 second to open up your PowerPoint.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Okay, Sue, I have the presentation shared and you're online.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to provide another update. Next slide, please. So we are one of 52 counties at very high COVID activity level across the state. There are 19 critically high level counties, so they are worse off than we are. Delta variant remains the cause of virtually all the cases across the country. And you've probably heard in the news that the Omicron variant has been detected in the state of Wisconsin. So case counts have sort of plateaued in the last month. And if you look at the bottom right, that funny little bar graph, well, it looks funny. There's a couple days that are absolutely blank, and that is because the Wisconsin Electronic Disease Surveillance System had some technical difficulties for several days, resulting in no reports on some days. It really did not help our workflow. But anyway, we continue to follow up with, of course, all positive cases, as many as we can reach. People don't always answer their phones or want to speak with us. And isolation and quarantine are mitigation measures that continue to be public health priorities. Across the state, hospitals are extremely busy with patients suffering from COVID and other conditions causing hospitalization. In November, we had a total of 16 hospitalizations in Door County residents due to COVID-19. This is the highest number of hospitalizations for COVID we'd had in 1 month all this year. It's the most in 1 month since December of 2020. And I certainly do not want to speak for Door County Medical Center, but I am aware that they've been extremely busy with inpatients, and that transfer of patients to other hospitals in the region or anywhere in the state is difficult because many hospitals are near capacity. I did begin to listen this morning. Dr. Hayes did a webcast regarding this with Miles Danhausen from the Pulse. It was very interesting if you care to check that out. The majority of hospitalizations and deaths remain in those that are not vaccinated. And so statewide, there's nearly 5 times as many cases in unvaccinated compared to those fully vaccinated. The rate of hospitalizations is 11 times higher in unvaccinated, and the death rate is 15 times higher compared to those fully vaccinated. So specific to Door County, in the first 11 months of this year, so through November of 2021, there have been 103 hospitalizations attributed to COVID. 86 of those were in unvaccinated folks, and 17 of those were fully vaccinated. And likewise, there have been more deaths attributed in Door County when folks are unvaccinated. So there's been 20 deaths of Door County residents attributed to COVID who were unvaccinated, and less than 5 deaths in fully vaccinated. And those numbers are for since January of this year. Next slide, please. What is happening in our community is similar to what's happening in the state as a whole. And this is an update of a graphic I showed you in October. And I just want you to be aware that children under 18 continue to represent the highest number of new confirmed cases compared to other age groups. So on this graph, this is Wisconsin cases, and you can see about a year ago, the peak there, the dark blue line indicates the under 18 age group, and it was the lowest amount of cases. Now that same age group has the highest burden, you can see in the closer to the end of the graph. Next slide, please. So this is just Door County cases, and it is in the last 30 days. So between November 13th and yesterday, confirmed cases by age group, and 25%, over 25% of our cases are in those under 18. So, well, you know, the good news is children usually have just mild symptoms, but they can spread it to adults who are vulnerable to severe disease. So that's the community viewpoint we are very concerned about. And we continue to see that household spread is pretty much inevitable, and this has been the case ever since the Delta variant has been present. School districts all decide on their own mitigation strategies, including masking and quarantine. I believe that as of January 3rd, all four mainland public school districts will be at optional masking for all grade levels. I'm not currently aware of the island's plan. Their school is closed right now due to a COVID outbreak. And schools vary on their quarantine policies. And just generally, they've become more liberal in their policies. Next slide, please. Maybe a little good news. It was 1 year ago today that the first COVID vaccines became available in the United States. And statewide, 56% of residents are fully vaccinated. So this graphic is of Door County residents who have been fully vaccinated. And you can see we continue to be ahead of that at over 71% of our total population fully vaccinated. And down below on the left, you can see it divided out by age groups. We are providing the 5 to 11-year-old age group with vaccine. We've been doing that since last month when it became available. And the state data on vaccination for that age group is due to be released this week. So looking forward to that. I can tell you that for our part, we've given over 250 doses to that age group. We continue to be in collaboration and communication with Door County Medical Center and other vaccine partners regarding vaccine rollout. You can refer to our webpage for information about our upcoming vaccine clinics. Right now, our calendar just goes through this month, but by the end of this week, we'll have the vaccine calendar for January up there too on the website. And we continue to offer vaccine in Sister Bay, on the island, and in Sturgeon Bay. So I just have to mention, with the upcoming holidays, encourage you to make choices to help minimize your risk for getting or spreading COVID-19, beginning with please get vaccinated, including your booster dose. This month we had a very successful booster dose clinic, and we'll have another one next month. If you have symptoms of COVID-19 or in close contact with someone with COVID-19, please stay home if you're ill and get tested. I encourage everyone to wear a mask if you are in a public indoor setting. This is recommended whether you're vaccinated or not due to our continued high level of COVID. If you gather to celebrate, try to physically distance as much as possible, and even consider wearing a mask at a private family gathering if you have loved ones who may be at increased risk for COVID illness. And these precautions won't be forever, although it certainly seems like it has been. I wish everyone a safe and healthy holiday season, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Sue. I just wanted to thank you. I participated in the got my booster shot Thursday at your clinic, and I just had to comment how well run it was. From the people at the door and who helped with paperwork. It was a walk-in clinic, and there were a lot of people. It was snowing, but they managed to get everyone processed. I was being a baby because I had a bad reaction from my second shot, and the nurse talked me through it and assured me it might not be as bad and what I could do to take if it was. And then I was ushered back into this very room, and on the screen we had soft Christmas music and a fireplace and an RN gentleman who was reassuring and keeping time for everyone. So just first class. My boyfriend in Green Bay said he had his booster that day, and they just shoved him back out and wherever he had it. So we got first class treatment, and you're processing a lot of people, and I really, really appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Vinny?
Glad to hear that.
Thank you. Thank you as well for all of the work with everything that's been involved with COVID. Have you seen or found any studies, either, I don't think they're being done necessarily in Door County, but nationally? The question I get a lot is about schools, whether optional masking is something that you see an increased case when that happens. Has there been enough time in schools across the nation to have any studies done on this? Just wondering if you have any information. Thank you.
Yeah, really good question, Vinny. There are a number of studies out, and they are on the CDC website. So you might want to look there. I could also email you some if you'd like. But in general, masking does work. Universally is the best route. I can tell you with confidence and certainty that the school district that's had, well, the island has had the least cases, right? Because they're a really small school and they didn't have any cases in their school until this month. But for the mainland schools, Gibraltar has had the least number of cases. And again, they are a smaller school, so it's probably not fair to compare them to the larger school districts, but significantly less cases at Gibraltar, and they have been the ones with the strictest masking policies. So that is not very scientific. It's really anecdotal, but that's our experience. Maybe that's helpful.
Thank you.
Nissa?
Thank you. Morning, Sue. I was wondering if at some point we would also get data on what our percentages with booster shots. I realize that it's still kind of newer, so a lot of people haven't gotten them or just starting to get them, but I was wondering if that at some point would be added to the percentage of how many people are vaccinated.
That's another good question, Nissa, and one I've wondered, and we rely on the state for those data points, and they have not been working on that. They want to get the 5 to 11-year-old age group up and running, and it has been something that we health officers have asked the state to provide, so we will see. We have not kept track of that on a local level.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much, Sue.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we missed, hold on. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question, I guess, for us, like, what's going on with our operations, like in this building? And I guess maybe my specific selfish question is, are we looking at sitting in the chambers all together next by the January meeting, or what's our thoughts about us being able to kind of get back to normal? Thanks.
I guess, again, for right now, I'd talk with both Sue and Joe in terms of what are some of the best practices. Obviously, we're still doing the advisory in terms of masking, obviously is being recommended, but in terms of our operations, we're still trying to practice the distancing. So with the numbers being at they are right now, with them also peaking, I guess I foresee us staying in this format at least through January, and we'll assess it each month in terms of the format that way moving forward.
Susan?
I have to say that I can't press anything on my screen that allows me to get in the queue, so I don't know why. But anyway, I just, if you don't mind, I just want to say this has, been another challenging year for our staff, and I would guess that my fellow supervisors would agree with me that we really appreciate not just what the health department has done, but all of the staff that have, gone well beyond what they normally have to do to get us through all of this. And I really think they've done a wonderful job. So thank you. And I hope you get a little respite, possibly, over the holidays.
Okay, anybody else?
Okay, then just to, I guess, finish up then the rest of my report, I'm going to stay with COVID just for another minute, just in terms of our operations. It has gone through both the Health and Human Services Board, but also the Administrative Committee. So if you think about it, just in terms of an update, we've been dealing with, COVID now for almost going into 2 years in some form or fashion. So, but the one thing that we looked at during the budget process is what should we do in regards to our COVID operations? And again, part of the discussion during the budget process was this in terms of staffing and how we do that. So one of the things that we are working on, and again, it's gone through both Health and Human Services and also the Admin Committee, is we're proposing to use our COVID funding. And now this is not the ARA dollar. So when you think about the pockets of money, there's the ARA dollars that came into the county. We have that money segregated. But there is also money that comes in through the state, through Health and Human Services. So we do have money that came in for that, specifically for our response to COVID. What we've done the past year is we staffed up a little bit in terms of immunizations and the clinics in terms of getting some LTE help. But we've really dedicated a significant amount of our own staff time, in other words, within public health, just to address COVID, whether they're helping manage the clinics, doing the calling as far as contact tracing and so forth. So one of the things that we propose at Health and Human Services, this is Joe and working with Sue, is we're looking at bringing on 2 DTE positions. In other words, they're considered temporary but full-time positions into the organization. They'd be funded with those dollars that came in through Health and Human Services. But in essence, what we're doing is we're trying to slowly, I guess, transition to where we have like if you can do like an org chart, because I'm more visual. Imagine our org chart where you have Sue as your health officer, and now we have our public health staff, hopefully trying to push them back towards their traditional duties. And then we're going to have like a COVID wing or staff that are specifically focused on addressing the issues related to COVID. So those 2 positions that we're trying to bring on would actually help manage that at 2 aspects. So we brought that through as approved at both committees. We didn't have a resolution formally done because the DTE is normally part of our, if it's in the budget, we usually authorize that, but I would like to document it in terms of a resolution as a COVID response. So I will be bringing that back in January. But I do want to let you know, because we're going to try to get those positions posted and filled in terms of our operations. But there's just a number of things. Obviously, right now, we're very busy with immunizations and all the contact tracing, so that's creating a significant amount of workload. But again, on our other side of the house, Sue is responsible for updating their 5-year plan, and we put that off for a year. And the state's now saying that we need to get those projects and reports done and compliant. So we actually need to start getting our staff back to doing some regular program functions. They've been doing significant amount of work on COVID in terms of their hours and allocations. So I just wanted to provide an update to the county board on that. And we'll be bringing that forward as a form of a resolution. So that way it's at least documented in your minds in terms of how we're trying to address that. And that we also are comfortable that, again, these positions are specifically tied to the COVID funding. And if that funding would go away, those positions would also go away. But we'll be bringing that forward next month. But I just want to give you an update in terms of our address in terms of the COVID. In terms of the other part of my update, again, if you just look at the staff memo, you can start to see it's getting shorter, which is great. We're getting a lot of those projects done or near completion. So that is great news. Obviously, some of those projects will obviously carry on into 2022, and we'll be adding on, I guess, all of the new projects that are coming forward. And again, just the fact that I'm summarizing does not mean I'm doing them. So there's a lot of kudos to all the department heads in terms of their work and accomplishments of what they've done in a lot of these big projects. And again, also to the home committees in terms of their management of them. But again, I thought it's just kind of nice just to kind of see where we are towards the end of the year. You can see a lot of completes on a lot of those projects. So I don't know if there's any other questions on my report. Otherwise, we can kind of move forward.
Todd?
Yeah, in regard to the COVID funds that you're talking about for these DTE positions, what kind of dollars are you talking about from a funding perspective is the county seeing? Not the CARES Act, but those kind of monies.
I think it was presented at finance. We still have about $700,000 left in terms of funding that's come through Health and Human Services that's available for operations that way. And when Joe did the analysis based off all of our contact tracers, the nurses also doing the clinics, and if we'd add these 2 positions, we have funding for about 2 years. So for 2022 and then 2023, depending on what happens.
Thank you.
Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ken, where are we with the Cane Island Phase 4 project?
The Cane Island Phase 4, the project's actually on the agenda. We'll be discussing that in a minute.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any business and updates? Resolutions. Resolution 2021-82, approval of gift, grant, and/or donation, U.S. Forest Service grant for priority invasive species control. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2021-82, the approval of a grant from the U.S. Forest Service for priority invasive species control. Line 17, it gives you the amount, $50,000. There's going to be matching monies from the department. That's on line 20. 25% of $12,500 in match monies to control. Let's see, where is it? Invasive species: Phragmites, wild parsnip, teasel, and Japanese knotweed in the county.
Okay. Any questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board. That is passed by a vote of 21-0. Thank you. Resolution 2021-83, purchase of rubber-tired loader, conveyor, and screening plant for the Highway and Airport Department. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is equipment for the asphalt operation, and it's been very profitable for our county. And it's equipment for it to replace parts and also include a loader for that operation. And I want to point out that the Highway Department is purchasing a demo unit at about 1/3 the price of a new unit. So we're coming into under the $500,000 that we have set aside for that money.
Any questions? All right, we will go to the voter board. That is passed on a vote of 21 yea, 0 nay. Resolution 2021-84, approval of agreement with fixed base operator at Door County Cherryland Airport. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is to approve the lease that the fixed base operator has at our airport. This fixed base operator has been operating for a number of years, and they, as in discussed on page 13, it's including all the operations that they do. The county does make a profit of selling the fuel for the operation of the airplanes, and this would be approving the lease for a 15-year lease.
Any questions? Todd.
What was the duration of the lease that's in place now?
It was a 10-year lease. This operator has operations at number of small airports throughout the state. So they're a well-reputable operation.
Alexis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to scroll back up, but I believe this is the agreement that was dated November 10th, 2021. And I just wanted to clarify the date that we're actually entering the agreement. Is that the date that the Highway Committee passed it, not County Board?
If the agreement's approved, that the approval will date back to November 10th, 2021.
Is that because of when the original agreement was? Are you backdating, or I just don't understand the timing, I guess?
Yeah, the county board has the ability to go back to November 10th, 2021 and approve this agreement starting on that date. The term of the 15 years will technically start on January 1, 2022.
Understood. Thank you, Grant.
Anybody else? We will go to the voter board. That's passed on a vote of 21 yea, 0 nay. Resolution 2021-85, lease renewal of Wisconsin DNR George K. Pinney Park. Dan.
Yes, this is a lease with DNR on George K. Pinney Park. We actually don't own it. It's a lease for, I think, a number of years. And we had a lease, it started 91 or something like that. And it's expired, and this is to extend the lease. I don't know why February 28th, 2034 they picked. Was there a reason for that, or was it 20 years and backed up, or what?
Yeah, I think that's just the term that was discussed between the state and the county. And as I mentioned, when this first came up, this was sort of an oops by the state and the county. We allowed the existing lease to expire, but continued it on a year-to-year basis by acquiescence. And what we're doing through this resolution and agreements is trying to correct that, bridge the gap between when the original lease expired and today's date, and enter into another lease long-term, as has been profitable for both, profitable and not in dollars and cents standpoint, but in the public interest standpoint, for both the state and the county.
Any other questions? Dave Engelbert.
Yeah, just a comment, I guess. Mr. Austin always talks about how long he was here, but I guess I'll just reference page 35. And if you look at the members of the board at that time when the first agreement with the DNR, there's one Engelbert that was sitting here then. And I guess I'm always been proud of the George Pinney Park, that it's a real asset to the county, and I'm glad we did it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go to the voter board. That is passed 21 yeas, 0 nay. Resolution 2021-86, transfer of non-budgeted funds for the Cana Island Restoration Phase 4 per 65.90 Wisconsin statutes. David Engelbert.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-86. It went through the facilities and parks and then to finance this past week, or a couple days ago, last week, I guess. If you look at page 35, I think it kind of explains the financial end of it, that we're advancing the money to the Parks Department to proceed with the work at Cana Island, and that pending the donations and grants that they may achieve, there's a couple variables as to how it'll be financed, but we are advancing the money and the project can proceed.
Sure, go ahead.
So David did an excellent job, but let me just give a little bit more detail on the financial aspect, just so you're aware. So again, if you go to page 35 again of the packet, you can actually see 2 columns that Wayne put together for the committees for their review. I guess what I would consider the columns in terms of the numbers, you'll see, I guess, what I consider the second and the third. So again, if I start at the beginning, just really quick, when we bid this out in spring, we got a bid of about $976,000. And we did not get the grants that we anticipated, so that project was held off. So Wayne worked with Immel, and they're estimating an increase of about 12%. So the budget's at $1.1 million. So then really what you're seeing is there's 2 options that you'll see. The first set on the worksheet shows you the funding that's in place or in hand. That's the $398,000. Then you'll see the difference is that the Door County Maritime Museum is working on 3 grants that could total up to $600,000. But you'll see in the column next to it, if they don't get it, it could be a potentially 0. So it could range from $600,000 down to 0. So in essence, the county would potentially advance either $100,000 or up to $700,000 for the project to be completed. Based off the revenue that the Maritime Museum is projecting or averaging over the past 3 years, we are expecting a 3-year payback for the project, even at the $700,000 mark. So again, the reason why we're recommending it is this based off the window of time. Again, they have now completed their payback on our initial bridge for what was considered the phase 3. So again, this is what's considered phase 4. So they're looking for the same opportunity to start this project in 2022 and get it completed. So that's what the resolution is before you, in essence, saying is that we're willing to allocate up to that amount to advance it to them with the understanding that that money will be paid back, quote unquote, to the county over a 3-year period.
Questions? Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to be clear, so the phase 3 is all paid up? We're good with that. So is there a, maybe this was discussed in committee, I mean, is there, is it just sort of the desire to keep going, or I guess is there any harm in waiting? I mean, if you know, if it takes us to wait for the Maritime Museum to get the money, then we don't have to loan them that money. Or, you know, I'm just kind of curious about, you know, what, if there was discussion on that, if any of the committee members could talk on that, or Ken, if you could just speak to that. I mean, I do wonder, it's hard to know. I mean, jumping 12% in a year is definitely not, you know, not the greatest, you know, amount, you know, certainly not in our favor. And I wonder if, you know, what if we waited another 6 months or a year? Is that a good idea? Or, I mean, I can't imagine it would jump up as high. Is it possible that maybe waiting, the prices would come back down a little bit? I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious if these things were discussed at committee, or if anybody can shed a little light on that. Thank you.
Sure, I can give you some quick context, and Wayne or someone else could also jump in. The 12% increase, this is an anticipated increase. We're not sure where that is in general. The one thing that is a little bit time sensitive, if you look at that sheet, we do have the Nelson Family Fund, that $250,000 grant. That has to be spent in 2022. So there is some time sensitive in the sense that if we don't get started, we'll actually lose money in terms of the grant funding. So the question is well, can we go back out and get more potentially? But again, just based off the trend, and again, just based off our trend so far, the pricing for restorations getting, I guess, more expensive. So it was discussed at Facilities and Parks that although we could wait and try to get more funding, we're also spending more money because the cost continues to increase. So I think the committee felt comfortable based that the money has now been paid back to actually proceed with the project and go forward. So,
thank you, Ken.
Oops, sorry. I did word my mistake. Sorry.
Biz?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So by approval of this, then that will allow phase 4 to go out for bid.
That is correct.
So I can't see waiting. If we wanted to go out for bid, we should do it now.
Okay. Morgan?
Just a quick question back on page 35. You have the secured funding, which is from the Maritime Museum. Those grant requests that are pending, are those also Maritime Museum requests, or are any of those county requests?
Those are our 3 grants that are being submitted by the Maritime Museum.
Okay, so that June 2022, is that due, or is that when it's awarded?
That's when it's awarded.
Okay, do the other 2 have award dates too, or are they rolling?
I do not have the specific dates on when those are awarded.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we will go to the voter board. And I was just informed this takes a 2/3 vote. That's passing a vote of 21 yea, 0 nay. Resolution 2021-87, acceptance of the SBU WPPI 2022 study grant for facilities review and energy assessment. Dan?
Yes, I make the motion to approve. This is a grant that we will get for $7,000, and we're going to match it to do a energy assessment of some of our facilities. If you want to go deeper, you got to ask Wayne what the facilities he's going to assess and all that. So,
all right. Any questions? All right, we will go to the voter board. That is passed by a vote of 21 yea, 0 nay. Resolution 2021-88, approval of donation to Door County for walking path at John Miles County Park. Dan?
Yes, there's a map on your agenda that shows that someone is donating the money to have a walking trail in the fairgrounds, basically. And it's completely a donation, free of county money. And this is to accept it. There's a map that shows where it's going to be.
Megan?
Thank you very much. I was really excited to see this. I think it's a great idea and it'll be an awesome addition to that park, just to get more use in there. I am curious though, from a maintenance standpoint, what are we looking at adding for keeping that going after its completion? How many hours per year, or re-gravel or anything like that, just so we have all the information?
Sure, good question. It's actually going to be asphalt, so our maintenance will really be minimal. Some people have asked about snow removal in the winter, and sure, that can be added to the list when all the other priorities are done. Are there some residual dollars involved in that? Yes, but I think it's pretty de minimis.
Awesome, thanks.
Rodney?
So it's a great idea. I think we need more trails, place to walk, ride bikes, and I like the comment about that you said about the snow removal. I think that should be considered. I moved from Colorado, and I say our taxes were a lot less actually. And the one town I was in, we had like a lot of miles of trails that were plowed, so you could use bicycles. I think it's helps with the virus and things like that people, I don't know, getting outside is just good for your health. But anything having more trails is great. So thanks for your work on all that.
Nissa?
Thank you. I just think it overall would be good for the ADRC. Anybody who goes for lunch and wants to go have a walk after lunch, but doesn't necessarily want to be using the equipment in the little gym that's there. I think seasonally it'll be wonderful just for the retired people that have lunch to take a walk afterwards. Thanks.
Anybody else? Morgan?
I just have a quick question. Where did this idea come from? Did she approach you out of the blue, or was this an ongoing relationship with the donor?
So
just a little background.
Yeah, so no, that's a good question too, because it's important. The donor actually approached Jake
Okay.
at the community center there, and Jake said, "Hey, we have this idea. Can we get some really quick figures together so we'd know how much she needs to donate?"
Sure.
And then we're trying to work with, and I say it's Jake working with her and her timeline and her tax perspective and making the donation this year and next year. So I just got some really quick quotes from a couple different bidders, and it is a project we'll have to put out to full bid, but I'm pretty comfortable with the quotes that they gave us, that they'd still be pretty much the same. And we had a couple different concepts. I want to say this is about a quarter mile, and then the other one was quite a bit longer, but that just drove cost higher to I think 60 or 65,000, and it's not something she was comfortable with.
Sure.
And it really took it all the way down to the other end of the parking lot, and I think this is probably a better, close, intimate use to the community center and the gardens and the natural vegetation we have there. So she was comfortable with it, Jake was, and we really had to then get it in front of you in order to proceed fairly quickly.
That's great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is strictly a walking path. There are no ATVs, no snowmobiles?
Oh, no, yeah. I mean,
Strictly a walking
I'm sure someone might have rollerblades or whatever, or maybe they have a bicycle, they could certainly do something like that, but the intended purpose and the donation is for the folks that use the community center or anyone else after hours. So there are quite a few people that I see after hours when the place is closed in the summer that are just walking around the parking lot. and the park in general. So this is just one more opportunity for them.
Thank you.
Roy, are we planning to add trees or any shrubbery on that walking path?
Yeah, they're kind of hard to see on that concept drawing, but they are outlined in black. And there's some funding available within those donation dollars to put those trees in. I think I have a bench there, and then we have a culvert that we have that we can repurpose from another job that we had for a small swale that normally gets water. So.
Any other questions? All right, we will go to the voter board. As passed on a vote of 21 yeas, 0 nay. Resolution 2021-89, proclamation designating the month of January 2022 as the Fair Housing Month. Grant, Ken?
Thank you.
We have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, this is related to the West Side School Housing Project and our administration of the Community Development Block Grant dollars, which you may recall are about $1.5 million. One of the things we have to complete in order to be eligible or to have the money released to us are fair housing actions. This proclamation is the last fair housing action we need to complete in order to ensure that those funds will actually be released, and that's why we're bringing it forward this month.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any other action items that we as a county will have undertaken or will undertake in regards to, I guess, promoting fair housing? Thank you.
Yeah, Mariah is probably not here, but and maybe Ken can comment on it, but we are in process of revising our zoning ordinance to address affordable housing and fair housing. I don't think those amendments will be ready to forward to the county board until sometime the first quarter of next year.
Kara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had sort of the same line of thinking as Supervisor Voltman. It feels like I love all the words, but it just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of action behind it. And I'm grateful for your explanation, because I was reading it, I didn't know where it was coming from or why, who had proposed it or what it would do. So that makes sense that we need it for the grant. But I would hope that this could just be a stepping point for something bigger and more actionable items. Thank you.
I can just add that there will be more action items. Obviously, one part is the zoning code, but if you recall from the retreat, there's a number of different housing initiatives that are, I guess, that are moving forward, that are still being worked on by Mariah, and hopefully some of those will actually start to come forward in January. So there are a number of different initiatives in terms of trying to address housing in the county that will be coming forward. So I would concur with you 100% that this is a good step, but hopefully there's a lot more to come.
Any other questions? All right, by voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Resolution 2021-90, appointments to committees, commissions, and boards. Ken?
Sure. So this is just a quick update. You'll notice that some of them we did a shorter term just to get them in sync with our appointments in April. So again, we have a new individual for the Housing Authority with their bio included. We have 2 library board members, which are existing members that are just being extended right now to April. And then in April, we'll do the appointment for the end of 2025. Then we have the Nicolay Federated Library and also our Veterans Commission.
Any questions? All right, by voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Resolution 2021-91, petition the Secretary of Transportation for airport improvement aid by Door County Board of Supervisors, Door County, Wisconsin. Roy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a resolution so that we can start the process to petition the Secretary of Transportation for improvements at the Cherryland Airport. This is a multi-year project. This is like probably going to be for 5 or 6 years. And it lists all the things that we would want to do, but this is a start of petitioning so that we can get the grants and to get the work done.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. By voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Resolution 2021-92, approval of the 2022 to 2024 collective bargaining agreement with the Door County Emergency Services, Local 4982. Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-92, the collective bargaining agreement with the emergency services. Just a few highlights. Certainly, it's been endorsed by Aaron and his group, the management group of that oversees that group. It's a 3-year agreement. Year number 2, 2.25. Year number 3, 2.5, and 2.5 for year number 2, and year number 3, 2.5. There's some vacation language, some instructors pays. There's some added task force topics, and some advanced EMT language was cleaned up. In your packet, there's a lot of information. Grant is probably going to provide you more details on it, but we recommend this passing.
I think Todd did a good job. I don't know, I need to provide too many more details. The document, this particular collective bargaining agreement, the strikes and additions are shown. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but to give you a little bit of background, this is the product of collective bargaining that began in the middle of July 2021. We had 2 or 3 collective bargaining sessions after the initial exchange. What you may or may not recall, in the last 3-year agreement, we addressed many of the language issues that have been languishing for years. So this time around, we focused primarily on some cleanup and the dollars and cents. Very briefly, if there's not any questions.
There is a question.
Okay.
Nissa?
Just a quick one. Page 73, line 32, it says December 1st, 2021 through November 30th, 2021. Those dates sound a little not correct. That was the only thing I noticed. And I would have pointed out at the meeting, except I was in Florida.
No, that's a good question, but actually the way that it works with the employee's ability to earn a reduction in the premium is it relates back to the last year. So that's the last remnants of the Go 365 program, that for the 2022, a reduction in the employee's required 15% premium will relate back to that employee's participation in calendar year 2021 in the Go 365 Wellness and Reward Program. So
I get that, but it says from December 1st, 2021 through November 30th.
Oh, you're correct. It should be 2020.
Okay, that makes much more sense. It was just, you can't go backwards in time unless something's changed.
Sorry about that, I missed that.
Yeah, no problem. I saw that, I was like, wait.
Bonus points for catching. Any other questions before I prattle on?
Todd has another question.
Note that this has been ratified by the rank and file pending approval at the county board level.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the body of the collective bargaining agreement, we did go through and made an effort to eliminate and will prospectively avoid the use of gender-specific pronouns and nouns that might appear to assume that a person is of a particular gender. Also, there were some minor changes on page 66 of the packet, page 5 of the collective bargaining agreement. Article 7C, limitations of accumulation will no longer apply to employees hired on or after January 1, 2019 during years 1 through 6 of their employment. What we did in the 2019 through 2021 collective bargaining agreement is put some limits on accumulation. What we found is those limits on accumulation disproportionately impacted newly hired employees or employees during their first 6 years of employment. So in talking with Aaron and talking with the bargaining unit, we decided to make those limits not applicable to those employees. You have to keep in mind in a bargaining unit situation, those employees have the lowest amount of seniority, are accumulating vacation and other paid time off at the lowest rates, and their opportunities to take their vacation is relatively limited. So that's why we made that change. On page 72 to 73 of the packet, page 11 to 12 of the collective bargaining agreement, Article 19, insurance, the language has been revised to recognize changes in county's wellness and rewards program. Again, that's a shift away from the Go 365 program. Pages 76 to 77 of the packet, pages 15 and 16 of the agreement. Article 28, wages, the language added as Todd indicated a number of things, but we had spelled out some concerns regarding the field training officer and instructor. And then on page 77 of the packet, page 11 of the collective bargaining agreement, the management and union task force, we added some subjects that we intend to discuss during the term of this collective bargaining agreement. And I think what's of significance is we've committed, both ourselves and the bargaining unit, to actually sit down and meet as a task force and try to address those concerns. In terms of the dollars, we're looking at a 2.25% increase effective January 1, 2022. A 2.5% increase January 1, 2023, and a 2.5% increase starting January 1, 2024. We've added, as was previously mentioned, advanced EMT and EMT, and we did that to provide the department some flexibility. We would like to be able to hire all paramedics, but the market is such right now that there aren't that many paramedics being produced when you compare that to the likely vacancies. So it gives the department some flexibility. Finally, we maintained a memorandum of, or shouldn't say memorandum, letter of agreement that deals with overtime that has been in effect for a couple of collective bargaining agreements. That's the sum and substance of it. As Todd indicated, the bargaining unit did ratify, and if the county board is inclined to ratify the agreements, we'll get those executed, and the agreement will be in place for 3 years.
Any questions? Dave?
Yes, just, I guess it was pretty well said about the schedule of compensation schedule, but the advanced EMT and EMT are the new positions. There are a result of our budget process approving the new positions. And so the emergency services will be hiring 6 more people in that area. And this is the payment for them. I guess I'd like to thank our staff. I sat in on most of the, or I think all of the negotiation sessions, and the county staff did a great job. But I'd like to also thank Aaron and the negotiation team from the EMTs. They were really good to work with. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we will go to the voter board. That's passed on a vote of 21 yeas, 0 nay. Resolution 2021-93, approval of the 2022 to 2024 collective bargaining agreement, Door County Sheriff's Department Association. Todd?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-93 with the Door County Sheriff's Association. Again, much like the EMT group, it's a 3-year agreement. Grant will go through a lot of the details. Unlike the other agreement, there's a summary page that talks about the changes, because there was a number of changes that were made as the agreement was being made that were too much to put it in red, I guess. But anyway, the summary pretty much tells you folks what it was that was changed. Numerous memorandums of agreement have been cleaned up. cleaned up acting supervisor pay, added security sergeant, cleaned up vacation, external hiring provisions were cared for, incorporated the second canine handler, which will be coming on board, and again, the summary pretty much spells that out, and I'm certain that Grant will go into more detail on this negotiations. Like David, I agree. In both cases, it was a very good committee to be a part of, and I was very impressed with the professional interaction by both sides through the entire negotiating process.
The talking points for this collective bargaining agreement are on page 83 and 84 of the packet. I guess I'd like to start that the reason we don't have a version of this collective bargaining agreement that shows strikes and new language is I made the decision that we could get by with talking points, and with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, even though there was a lot of changes in the language, I probably should have put together a version, but once you start going down that road, and we had an initial exchange of proposals on July 12th, 2021, and then 3 separate collective bargaining sessions, one in August, one in October, and one in November, and myriad conversations with the attorney representing the bargaining unit to get to the point where it just doesn't make sense to do that anymore. So what I'll do is breeze through the talking points if you want me to, but start off, does anybody have any questions? Okay. The term of this agreement, like the other one, is 3 years, January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2024. Wages in Addendum A represents the aging of the compensation schedule. Did things a little bit different with this bargaining unit. January 1, 2022, there's a 2% increase. January 1, 2023, a 2.5% increase. January 1, 2024, a 2.5% increase. And then on July 1, 2024, a mid-year 1% increase. So what that represents is for January or for 2024 is a 3.5% increase, but only a lift for half of that year. So you do that sometimes when you get to the point when you're nearing the end of the bargaining process and you need to bridge a gap. And what we did here is said, okay, we'll give you that 1% increase for half the year in 2024. Of course, that entire 3.5% increase is built on forever. And the reason why the Door County Deputy Sheriff's Association received a little bit more generous lift in terms of their compensation schedule is there was more give and take this time in the language of the collective bargaining agreement, and we thought we had gained some things that required, quite frankly, a quid pro quo. Some other things we did was we differentiated between security deputies and security sergeants hired on or after January 1, 2022. What you will note is those hired prior to January 1, 2022 will remain where they were, and those hired after January 1, 2022 will be in level G and level H, which prospectively, as people go out the door, will represent bigger savings to the county because the employees coming in are going to start at a lower rate. So we also placed the investigator sergeant in level C, made that separate and distinct from the patrol sergeant. That is because we made some adjustments in terms of an equity adjustment to the investigator positions, a targeted wage increase of $1,500, and we needed to separate out the patrol sergeant from the investigator sergeant to make that happen. Likewise, in this collective bargaining agreement, turning to the language, we eliminated and again will prospectively try to avoid use of gender-specific pronouns and nouns that might appear to assume that a person is of a particular gender. Section 6.9, appointed positions, we added the canine handler. There are now 2 canine handler positions, the mental health community engagement deputy, and the school resource officer positions. Section 7.01, vacation schedule. prior, the employees accrued at a different rate depending on how many hours per year they worked. Now, all represented full-time employees of the Sheriff's Department will accrue vacation at the same rate. Added Section 8.04, holiday falls on regular workday. Court security deputies and investigators will no longer routinely work on designated county holidays that fall on a regularly scheduled workday. They will receive holiday pay only, not their regular pay and holiday pay. What had happened previously is those positions, particularly the investigators, would be working when everybody else was off. They would get paid their regular pay and would also get paid their holiday pay, and that simply didn't make sense. And the bargaining unit agreed with us in that regard, so we changed it. Article 19, insurance. Again, we added language to recognize the transition away from the Go 365 program, and also added language with respect to the part-time security deputies. Section 23.01, we added parentheticals, which is the language in parentheses, for part-time security deputies, recognizing the Door County Sheriff's Office list of pre-approved footwear, clothing, and equipment. And that was just to resolve some issue as to what was eligible to be purchased with the allowance and what wasn't. Section 26.05, field training officer corrections training. We adjusted language to incorporate a January 1, 2019 memorandum of agreement into the four corners of the collective bargaining agreement, and that language appears on page 21, lines 18 to 24. Article 30, compensatory time off. We added a provision that employees may not request compensatory time off until and unless the employee actually has compensatory time off available. The reason for that is within a bargaining unit, they bid for vacation based on seniority. And a more senior employee, anticipating that he or she will earn compensatory time off during the year, will bid, and by bidding, block less senior employees who have actually accrued paid off in their bank from being able to bid on times off when they want their time off. So we all kind of agreed it made sense that employees couldn't schedule time off until they actually had it accrued. Part-time security deputies are not eligible to earn compensatory time off. They're part-time. They should not get into a situation where they have overtime. If they do, it actually makes more sense to pay them the overtime payment than allow them to use compensatory time, because anytime they would use compensatory time off, it's going to create overtime for somebody else. So we added Article 34, which speaks to the memorandum of agreements merely to identify the MOAs in existence as of the effective date of the collective bargaining agreement. What you will note with this collective bargaining agreement is we have a lot more, just in terms of pure numbers, of memorandums of agreement hanging out there that we hope to, during the course of the existing collective bargaining agreement, get incorporated into the collective bargaining agreement. These are vestiges of the way we used to do things. We would have letters of agreement, memorandums of agreement, sidebar agreements that one side or the other were concerned about making its way into the collective bargaining agreement, because once it's in the collective bargaining agreement, it has to be bargained out. If it's outside of the collective bargaining agreement, it has to be renewed to continue. But the ones that we have here that are listed in Article 34 have been around long enough that I think we're comfortable actually incorporating those into the collective bargaining agreement. And it's just a matter of myself and the bargaining unit's attorney finding the time to sit down and do that drafting. The only memorandum of agreement that is new is Addendum B. And what it does is two things. It recognizes external hires private service recognition. What that will do in terms of recruitment, we're having difficulty across the board, but with the Sheriff's Office, difficulty in recruiting, and to make ourselves more attractive to people that are working, existing law enforcement officers, we want to be able to recognize their years of service and some of their seniority and their experience when we're bringing them in the door. So, for instance, if somebody is coming from Brown County and they're earning 5 weeks of vacation, we can slot that person at a level within our accrual that would allow them to accrue at least that much vacation. Prior to this, somebody coming in from the outside most likely would be slotted at the entry level, and that's not attractive to somebody making a move. So we're trying to make ourselves more attractive to potential employees. And we also, because prior to this proposed collective bargaining agreement, probationary employees could not use their vacation and sick leave until they got through their probationary period. That has been, I think it's safe to say, problematic for some probationary employees. And when you look at it objectively, it's probably not entirely fair. So what we've added is that probationary employees will accrue paid vacation and sick leave immediately and, subject to all other related provisions of the collective bargaining agreement, be eligible to use paid leave as it accrues. Now, that's not going to open Pandora's box because, again, probationary employees are on the bottom of the seniority list, accrue at the lowest rates, and they're not going to be able to use their time off when they want to in any event because of those reasons. But it's better than saying they can't use it at all. Finally, addendum C, D, E, and F are just existing memorandums of agreement that we are continuing. Each has been supplemented to recognize some changes that occurred since the last, primarily with the canine handler position, recognizing that there are now 2. And second, we have grouped the canine handler positions and the mental health community engagement deputy for purposes of taking paid time off. Prior, the canine handler would be able to take time off whenever they weren't limited by being in a group and having a limit on the number of individuals within that group. But within this group of 3, only one can be off at any one time. So that's maybe a longer-winded version than you wanted of the summary of the changes. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. But
Vinnie?
Thank you very much. I just had one on page 123, the second paragraph, the second line. It says that the position of the mental health community engagement officer is attached, but I didn't see an attachment that describes what that position is. Where the canine handler and the school officer have those really well detailed, which is just nice. But if it's not something needed, that's fine. I'm just curious.
It was just an omission in putting together the package. There certainly is a mental health community engagement deputy position description, but we missed it.
Thank
And
you.
we can make that available to anybody if they want it.
Nancy?
Hi, I might have missed it, but when we first did the school resource officers, the school was that's all, folks, subsidizing that, but is that still happening? It is.
Insofar as, yeah.
Okay,
Insofar as I
just
know.
wondering.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, Grant, on page 120 of the packet under grandfathering. The first bullet there says a security deputy may not post for a vacant road deputy position, and a road deputy may not post for a vacant security deputy position. And there's some more language there and on down the page. I'm just curious, I mean, it's my understanding that we're trying to make it, I guess, easy for deputies to switch like that. So is it just about the training? Because then it goes on to then talk about, I guess they can post or they can apply externally and that kind of thing. So I don't know if you can just talk a little bit about what's our, I guess, our goals with hopefully keeping it flexible for officers to go from the jail to the road or vice versa. Thank you.
Yeah. Those of us who've been around long enough will remember that we've had combined list and separate list, and we're now in the kind of paradigm of having a separate list. The sheriff is probably eminently more competent to comment on this than I, but my understanding is that part of it has to do with the educational requirements now with the state. There is a track for security deputies and a track for road deputies. And it seems, at least at the moment, that never will the two run together. Again, that has changed over the years. And I think we're in that trying to encourage people to pick security deputies as a career and get away from some of the issues we've had in the past with people coming into the jail, and Biz may remember this, and bouncing right back out to the road when a position in the road becomes available, so that we're not using, so that people just aren't using the security deputy position as a way to get into the department with the idea they're going to skip out to the road. Because we do invest time, we do invest money in training people to be security deputies, and we do invest time and money in people that are road deputies. That's kind of the 30,000-foot view. Is the present idea is we want somebody coming in who's going to apply for security deputy position to be a security deputy, and the same thing with a road deputy. And we're not entirely for closing it. If they have the requirements, they can apply from the outside with everybody else. We also don't want to get stuck with, we don't want to have somebody that's working as security deputy working on trying to get training for a road deputy necessarily either. So hopefully that explains it. I will acknowledge it changes from time to time, but this is the paradigm we're in at the present time.
Kara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know it's standard, but I would feel remiss and regret not pointing out and making aware the indemnification Article 10, in which the accountability of any harm comes back to the county and reduces accountability in law enforcement employees. I know it's very standard again, but I just would feel bad voting yes for this and not drawing attention to it. Thank you.
Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're right, Grant. This goes back many, many years ago, because when I transferred from security deputy in the jail to the road, the first thing that had to happen is they sent me down to Fox Valley Tech to go through the training, which also included the firearm training and other training, which was different than working in the jail. So this goes back a long time ago, when it happened to me, and then I went through training down there, went through the firearm training and the other training so it could be a road deputy.
Any other questions? All right, we will go to the voter board. As passed by a majority of 21 yea, 0 nay. We are going to take a 10-minute recess. Please be back at 11:35. Okay, we are now back in session. Moving right along, Resolution 2021-94, authorizing Door County to enter into the settlement agreements with McKesson Corporation, Cardinal Health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a motion and a second. I will turn it over to Grant.
Well, I'm wearing out my welcome this morning, but this should be the last one. The resolution authorizes Door County to enter into the settlement agreements, the allocation memorandum of understanding, the Attorney General's memorandum of understanding, and to establish the county's opioid abatement account and establish the attorney fee disbursement account. So really, we're talking about 4 documents: the distributor settlement participation form, the Janssen settlement participation form, and then the 2 memorandums of agreement or understanding we talked about. I'm going to hit the highlights on this, and if you have any questions, interrupt me. This has been pending for a relatively significant period of time. We authorized this back in 2017. It involves truly a nationwide settlement, and from Door County's perspective, we have 3 law firms, Von Briesen and Roper and Krieger Dickinson being the local law firms, and Simmons, Hanley, and Conroy being the out-of-state law firm that's been representing the county. The basic terms provided here are, from the distributor standpoint, we'll pay a maximum of $21 billion over 18 years. A lot of money over a significant period of time. J&J, who is Johnson & Johnson, will pay a maximum of $5 billion over no more than 9 years. Of this $26 billion, approximately $22.8 billion in settlement proceeds are payable to state and local subdivisions. Keep in mind, this is a 60,000-foot view. This is all across the United States. The settlements allow for a broad range of approved uses. Exhibit E of the Master Settlement Agreement talks about those uses, and it's limited to, for local governments, to spending the money to abate the opioid epidemic. The settlement also provides for injunctive relief that requires important changes to both the distributors and J&J's conduct to hopefully better protect our nation's health and welfare. The settlement does it in 3 ways, through creation of a clearinghouse through which the distributors will be required to account not only for their own shipments, but also the shipments of the other distributors in order to detect, stop, and report suspicious opioid orders. Johnson & Johnson, which voluntarily ceased marketing opioids in 2015 and ceased selling opioids in 2020, will not market or sell any opioid products in the next 10 years and has agreed to cease lobbying concerning prescription opioids for 10 years. Johnson & Johnson has also agreed to make the clinical trial data for its discontinued opioids available for medical research. Now, how will the settlement be approved? It's important to note that this is not a class action opt-out settlement. Counties need to sign a participation agreement, and here there are 2, one for the distributors and one for the manufacturer, J&J, and also the settlements require that a critical mass of both state and local governments opt in not later than January 2nd, 2022. After January 2nd, 2022, both sides have options to walk away if there's not enough participation. And that's important because participation levels affect how much money settling parties will receive. About half of the funds are in the form of incentive payments which grow with participation. We need nearly 100% participation in a given state to get 100% of the money. So participation is critical to maximize the dollars that come into Wisconsin and into Door County. In terms of a time frame, I think it's important we take a step back. This settlement started to materialize around November 4th. On December 2nd, we got to go ahead to go forward with this. And the Joint Finance from Wisconsin, anyway, approved this, I believe, on November 29th. So right now what we're waiting for are the parties who are participating in the litigation to agree on the settlement. From a statewide perspective, 71 of the 72 counties are participating. The only holdout has been Polk County, who never participated in the litigation at all and have not opted in. So they are the one holdout. What we hope again to get is 100% participation of those counties and other local units of government that are actually participating in the litigation to maximize our recovery. Obviously, Door County has the option not to participate. If Door County would choose not to participate, it would be immediately in active litigations with deadlines that go out 90 days. Within that 90 days, we would have to do all the work that we would need to do to move forward with the civil litigation. Obviously, what the court is trying to do here is to incentivize total participation because the court believes, as does the attorneys, as do the attorneys that are representing the plaintiffs, that this is a beneficial settlement. So what do we need to do to participate? One is adopt the resolution that's before you. Two, present the settlements and the accompanied MOUs to the plaintiff's attorneys after they're executed. What we're doing by this resolution is designating the county administrator as the county's, as the authorized county position to execute these agreements and move forward. What's important to note is there may be some minor changes in the settlement as we move forward, which both the county administrator and myself will be empowered to agree to. If there are any substantive changes, obviously we would bring those back to the county board. We don't anticipate that because, again, this is a national settlement. The documents that are before you today to execute or to approve for execution are being presented on a national level, basically as they are. They aren't being changed. The other question that has come up is when will money begin to flow? Assuming we get the requisite total participation, the distributors have already made an initial deposit of funds in escrow at the end of September. They will make additional deposits early summer of 2022. And if everything goes exactly as planned, money will start to flow to states and local governments as early as April 2022. The J&J agreement in particular offers opportunity for significant acceleration of payments if state and subdivisions meet specific participation levels. And I think we need to take a step back and take a look at it from the settling defendant standpoint. They want 100% participation so they know that their liability is limited going forward. That's the benefit they gain from this particular settlement. So what we will do if this resolution is adopted is Ken will sign the two memorandums of understanding and the two participation agreements. We will then forward the resolution to the attorneys representing the county, and we will do that well in advance of January 2nd, 2022, to the deadline. We will set up both the designated account for the opioid settlement, and we will also set up, or not set up, but we will deposit money in an account that the state will escrow to provide for attorney fees. The attorney fees, which is the last thing I intend to discuss, is something we agreed to when we retained these three law firms back in 2017. We agreed to 25% plus their out-of-pocket cost and disbursements. There is a national fund being set up for attorney fees and out-of-pocket expenses. The law firms that represent Door County will apply to that national settlement fund to have their attorney fees and out-of-pocket disbursements paid. Realistically, we don't expect that that fund will be sufficient enough to pay much more than 5%. So we will still have to pay 20% plus the cost and disbursements. And in fairness to the law firms involved that are representing Door County and all the other counties, the state is going to escrow those funds at the state level until this is all worked out so that the law firms are assured of their recovery. The one distinction I want to make for those of you that have been around long enough and remember the tobacco litigation, when that settlement came through, the money was distributed to the states with the promise to have it flow to local units of government. That never happened. So what was done here is the state was lobbied and I think wisely passed legislation that provided for a distribution of the proceeds in advance. 70% of it goes to local units of government, 30% of it goes to the state, and the money that goes to the local units of government will go directly from the defendants who are setting up an account to pay the local units of government in Wisconsin and elsewhere. It won't go to the state first. So the state never gets its hands on the local units of government share. So the local units of government will have these funds available to use. Again, the only limitation is opioid abatement, and that's a fairly broad category of uses for these funds. So that's my explanation. I don't know if anybody has any questions. There was a lot of material provided to you. I'm sure you all read the 700, 800, 900 pages that were linked and are well versed.
We do have questions, Grant.
Okay.
Good. Nissa?
Okay, you can give me a very Cliff Notes answer without going into a lot of detail, but the allocation percentage, for instance, like Door County, it says 0.282%. Is that kind of based on, I mean, I realize that some areas are much higher. Is that based off of population in the areas, or is it based off of already having higher issues in certain areas than other areas?
It's based on a formula that only an actuary would understand. But one of the big factors, if you remember back to 2017, we had to provide information to our attorneys about our local expenditures. So to answer your questions, I think the biggest single factor is expenditures related to the opioid crisis in the county leading up to the filing of the lawsuit, just pure dollars and cents. So thankfully, Door County has been less impacted than other counties, and that's reflective, and that is reflected by the roughly 0.3% that we get in terms of the settlement. But that's how they came up with the numbers. The biggest driver was the impact within the county of the opioid crisis. And you'll note that Marinette, which is well understood to be a gateway between Point South and Michigan, is getting a rather significant percentage in spite of the fact that it has a relatively low population.
Okay, thank you.
Vinny?
Thank you. This is kind of new, so I don't know if there's been time, but does Health and Human Services feel like this addresses the need, and how much has it changed since 2017? That's the first part of the question. And then looking at, I didn't see an Exhibit E, but maybe I missed a link that would go to, but could you just briefly give us what is considered opioid abatement, just in general? Thank you. If not now, that's fine, but
No, I'm not.
it.
That was Exhibit E was one of the was an exhibit to one of the link documents, and I couldn't even start going through the list. There's a fairly broad list of things that fall into the category of opioid abatement. I know our Department of Health and Human Services is aware of that. And to answer the first part of your questions, I've discussed this with Joe, and I think it's safe to say he's looking at this as sort of found money. We are addressing the issues as we go along anyway on the county tax levy or other dollars that flow through. So I think from his perspective, and I can't speak with him, certainly from my perspective, if the county actually gets the amount of money that it is projected to get, even if that's over a couple decade period, that'll go a long way towards helping us address those issues. But I can't speak to whether the problem has gotten worse since 2017.
Thank you.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Grant, I'm just wondering if you know, looking at this list on, it's pages 167, 168, 169, I think here. It lists all the counties, and then it lists some cities, but like, for example, Green Bay is not on there. And obviously there's a lot of cities. So is there a chance that more cities will join into this, and then our number that we're looking at will actually go down? Or I guess maybe, I don't know, my question might just be, why aren't there more cities on this list? Or what makes, what puts a city on this list versus cities that aren't on the list? Thank you.
Back in 2017, the local units of government that aren't on this list opted not to join the litigation. And while this is harsh, I think it was necessary because when it became evident near the end of this summer that there was going to be a settlement, we had some local units of government that did not initially want to opt in, all of a sudden wanted to opt in, And it was decided, not just in Wisconsin, across the U.S., it was decided that if you weren't in, you weren't going to be able to jump onto the wagon in the 11th hour and participate in the settlement. So to answer your question briefly, a decision was made in 2017 to participate or not participate, and those on the list are the ones that opted to participate.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? None. Okay, great. Thank you, Brad. We will go to the voter board. That's passed on a vote of 21 yeas, 0 nay. Thank you. Resolution 2021-95, amend Resolution 2019-71, alternative work schedules to extend the sunset dates through 12/31/2022. Ken?
Sure, this is more of a procedural thing, but again, if you recall, we had set up alternative work schedules as a response to our COVID operations. Again, it was projected to expire at the end of the year. Obviously, based off our numbers and trends, we want to be able to have that as a tool that we're able to use, and just because of that, it had to come forward for the extension. It's pretty simple.
Any questions? By voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Ordinances, we have a report, denial report for Staley. Dave Enigal?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept the report, and if there are any questions, the director is here.
Alexis?
Thank you. I appreciate Mariah was able to be here. I do have a couple questions regarding the report, and I did review the RPC agenda packet, so I have that background, and I'm still asking these questions. So was the RPC, from my understanding in the packet, there was a wetland delineation that was done by county staff at some point in the past when the parcel was sold. Is that a certified delineator report, or is that just for county purposes?
That would have just been county staff, not a certified delineator. I don't know if the DNR had the certified delineation program at that point, but it was county staff that went out in 2011 when the lot was being split and marked the boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
That were in place at that time.
Okay. I guess before I go in, is there any background that, do you have something that you want to say that would anticipate some questions, or do you want me to just ask my questions?
Doesn't matter. I mean, I can give a little background. Otherwise, if you want to just ask your questions.
Okay. I get a little, I'm sorry if I'm asking duplicative questions because I don't really understand the hearing process and all of that. So I don't know when to participate on these things necessarily sometimes. So
maybe I should give a little.
That's why. That's why I don't want to like ask things that you're going to get annoyed with me. So
I'm not going to get annoyed.
Okay.
No, I'll give a little background and I'll try to be quick. So in the 1990s, the county established processes for wetland map amendments, because what was happening before that was, maps were just getting amended based on whether the Resource Planning Committee liked the project or the proposal or whatever it was. So what we did in the 90s was we outlined a process where you needed to have concurrence from the DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers before we would change a wetland map. And that was done primarily to fix our maps, to reflect what was actually going on the ground. And if somebody wanted to rezone actual wetland, then that process usually led them to decide most of the time to not even pursue it. Mm-hmm. And then sometime in the past 10 years or so, maybe even more, 12 or 15 years, we shifted that somewhat. So now the zoning administrators are allowed when they're in the field to make the call about whether it's wetland or not. And then that way they can issue the permit or not based on what's in the field, rather than forcing somebody to go through the process to fix the map. So the only time that we're faced with the situation that we're in now is when somebody wants to fill actual wetland and convert actual wetland to a different zoning district. So yeah, for this particular property, this lot was created in 2011 by a certified survey map. County staff did go out and mark at that point what they thought the wetland boundaries were in 2011 when the lot was being created. And at that point, there would have been access off of South Lake Michigan Drive into the buildable area of this parcel. But now that wetland has significantly expanded in the past 10 years, and so it's cut off the access that the lot would have from south of Lake Michigan Drive.
Yeah. So that, okay, thank you for that. So that kind of gets to my question of like, wetlands, when you have a certified delineator, are not necessarily created or you know, they don't grow necessarily based on the water that's present, right? Like, we know that. So I guess I'm just curious, on the 12, you said that in 12 to 15 years ago, zoning administrators could make the call. I'm not trying to be critical, I just want to clarify. Does that kind of go back to their making the call rather than RPC? Or like how do we still go through the process?
So if someone applies for a permit now on a property that has a wetland, we go out and look at where the project is staked, and then we make a determination as to whether or not we think it meets the wetland setback or not. If they don't agree with the staff assessment, then they can go get a certified delineation if they want, and then we use the certified delineation because that's the process the DNR has lined it up. So in this particular case, no one's arguing about where the boundaries are. The certified delineator and staff and resource planning committee think that the wetland that exists right now is the way that it's mapped. But it's different than it was 10 years ago when there was actual access to the buildable part of the parcel. Now there's no longer access to the back part.
Okay. My other question. Right, sorry. So to the DNR, so the DNR and the Army Corps have to agree, which they have in this, to allow, if you know they've provided approval, now comes to local authority. Was there, I have two questions on that. Was there an update to the Exhibit B in the RPC packet that said the DNR, so the letter was basically from DNR saying that we certify that your report is done, but we still haven't determined that it's correct. That's how I interpret it. Is that accurate?
You might know more about the packet than I do at this point.
Sorry.
So I think the Army Corps of Engineers and the DNR in this particular case have both already given whatever authorization would be necessary in order for the area of wetland to be filled for a driveway. But the county, in the county zoning ordinance, has a list of criteria that need to be met in order to rezone actual wetland. And that was the focus of the discussion at the resource planning committee level. Okay. And it's a little weird because, yes, the DNR is signing off that they think this is okay, but the DNR, a different branch of the DNR, is who gives us the rules that we have to have in our zoning ordinance about when a wetland can be rezoned.
Yeah, and so there comes my second question. Thank you so much for signing me up for that. So a few years ago, I don't know the timeline, there was a change in what we can do at a local level. Like, we can't say no because we don't like it, right? There has to be criteria. I forget the law, I forget the time. Do you know what I'm talking about though?
Deemer, is it Act 183, Grant?
It's like the zoning.
Yeah, I know.
So the previous administration,
and what that did was that related to when the DNR is allowed to issue permits for fill, like I was talking about, but it didn't do anything to change the zoning regulations. So the zoning regulations that we have in the wetland section of our ordinance are exactly the same in the shoreland and in the comprehensive ordinance, and this is, well, I guess it's technically in both, but yeah, so they mimic each other, but when they passed that law, those regulations didn't change.
Okay, so there's no issue with us going against what DNR and feds say, I guess, is...
To my knowledge, I think I'd defer that to Grant, but whether or not we're going to somehow get in trouble by not approving this, since the DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers have given permission for the fill permits to go into place.
No, they're two separate decisions, and we applied unique criteria.
Our criteria, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice if all this stuff matched.
Again, previous administration. Okay, so my only last comment, thank you for the questions. These are always difficult cases. I see them a lot. And usually I'm in the court where can't do much about it. It usually comes down to a civil issue. It sounds like there's a lot of history with these parcels. So I appreciate why it came in. I think there's other avenues for this homeowner or this landowner to go, but it's just difficult to look at this area in other situations like this when we seem to be applying rules differently, when people don't understand that that's how things evolve and change. So thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, Mariah. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Since it's a report, it's gonna be by voice vote, since it's not an ordinance. So all in favor of the denial, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Special reports, none. New business, do you want to speak briefly about the mitigation plan?
Sure. So Dan is online. We're going to do a very short, just quick explanation. So Dan, I moved you in.
Hey, Ken, you hear me?
You have the floor. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as Ken mentioned, Dan Kane, Emergency Management. Very short wrap up here. Just an FYI for you guys. We're talking about the Door County Hazard Mitigation Plan. This is an update to the 2016 version. This was a grant that I applied for that you accepted about 1 year ago for this project to be funded. Land Use Services has taken on the project. And essentially, this is a grant that runs every 5 years. Every 5 years, we're required to have this plan in order to be eligible for FEMA mitigation dollars. All of the cities and villages have signed up for participation within the confines of the project, which allow them to also fall under the plan and be eligible for mitigation grant funding. Towns are covered under the county already. We did hold public listening sessions to take input from stakeholders in the community, and provided that as appropriate in the plan. At a 30,000 foot level, the plan really addresses two major things. What are the risk factors for Door County, and what are the mitigation strategies that we can do to prevent those things? So, and there's a lot more to it than that, but that is the 30,000 foot level of what the plan is trying to get at. We focused on natural hazards this time around, not so much non-natural. And so that way we could kind of hone in on, I guess, take the elephant in smaller chunks, if you will. The amount awarded for the grant was $21,087 with a 25% cost match, which was done through, again, in kind through the Land Use Services time towards the project. Estimated spent to date about $24,397. So just want to, I guess, I know Mariah's there and Becky, I think, is online. Their work on this cannot go unnoticed. I want to thank them for all the work they did on this. And today, again, is just an FYI to inform you that the work has been completed and offer a chance for any last minute comments anybody would have before we send this off to FEMA and the state for their final approvals. Once we do have those approvals at those levels, we can bring this back to the county board with an official resolution of adoption of this plan for the next 5 years. And we're just now, I guess, following precedent what we did in 2016 by bringing it in front of you today before we send it off. So,
All right, thank you, Dan. Any questions? Okay. No questions.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dan.
Appreciate it.
Any oral committee reports? Review, sorry. Roy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to report on the Highway Committee, we've had 4 snow plowing events since December 1st, and they've been 3 of them been on weekends. The Highway Department is at full staff right now. They've just hired some new hirees, and so some of them have to be patient with the snowplow operations. Just for a side note, we've hired the first female highway worker, a very competent person. So we're now integrated at the Highway Department.
Great, thank you.
And I can add that I probably jinxed us because at the last highway meeting before we had the full snowstorms, I said we're way ahead of schedule on budget. And of course, Thad said, "Ken, you just jinxed us," and now we've had full storms. So I apologize for that in advance. So.
Review any committee minutes. Review of claims, vouchers, and bills. Announcements. The next regular county board meeting is scheduled for January 25th at 10 a.m. in 2022, so next year. Did you want to?
Yeah, so Nancy and I are usually in charge of the holiday party. And obviously with the numbers where they're at and the advice of our public health officer, we're looking at least pushing back the holiday gathering. Normally we do that on during January. But until we have a better idea where the numbers are at, we're going to postpone that at this point in time, and we'll look at a later date. So just an FYI that it's on our radar, but we're pushing it off for right now.
Okay. The meeting per diem code is 1214, and I want to take this opportunity, since it's the last meeting of this year, to wish everybody a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season. And thanks for everything you've done this year. It's been another crazy year that we managed to make it through, and looking forward to working together in 2022. With that, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
No further business to be transacted. I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
And we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.